Welcome to Peptide-proof, your source for rigorous, independent, evidence-based peptide intelligence. Are peptide users really cutting costs? The answer may surprise you. Let's get right into the data. We're pulling from a highly revealing late July report by New Beauty, powered by Beauty Engine data. They went out and surveyed over 1,000 heavy beauty consumers just to map out where modern aesthetic spending is actually going. From that group, they isolated a really dedicated cohort of 163 strict peptide users. And right away, we hit a fascinating paradox. Out of those highly dedicated users, just over 51% claim they're being way more frugal now than they were 6 months ago. So people are definitely trying to tighten their belts. But here's the catch. Nearly half of them refuse to cut their peptide budget. They're slashing expenses everywhere else, but their aesthetic and health routines completely untouched. Which brings us to a pretty telling number, $1,000. That is the minimum annual spend nearly half of these consumers are locking in for peptide therapies and weight loss meds. It represents a massive psychological shift. Peptides aren't just some experimental beauty trend people try once and forget about anymore. They're basically being treated as a non-negotiable fixed cost. But there is a massive gap between the market hype and actual consumer literacy. Over 81% of users instantly recognize the weight loss drug semaglutide, the GLP-1s that are dominating the headlines everywhere right now. However, while 60% claim to have at least some knowledge about peptides generally, only about 17% claim to be truly knowledgeable. Simply put, fewer than 1 in 5 users actually understand the science behind what they're paying for. Dermatologist Dr. Joel Schlesinger really hit the nail on the head here. He says, the word peptide guarantees nothing. Efficacy relies on which specific peptide, concentration, and formulation. It's a dry scientific reality, but it's absolutely crucial. What this tells us is that current market growth is largely fueled by trend momentum and blind trust, rather than real ingredient literacy. People are just buying the word peptide instead of the proven mechanism. So let's clear up some of that confusion by walking through the 3 main clinical classifications from the report. First up, signal peptides, like Matricel. These offer the most solid clinical evidence for naturally triggering collagen production, giving you mild but highly reliable improvements for fine lines. Second, copper peptides, like GHKCU. These act as mineral delivery systems and have fantastic data backing their antioxidant and skin repair properties. And finally, neurotoxin-like peptides, like ardurulene. They show great in vitro results for partially relaxing facial muscles, which is why they get called Botox in a bottle, but the real-world clinical sample sizes are much smaller. So in that case, the hype is definitely outpacing the evidence.
Beyond the headlines.
Into the research. Peptide-proof.
Understanding those categories actually brings us to a strict biological reality, the 500 Dalton rule. Simply put, most anti-aging peptides are just too large to penetrate the human skin barrier on their own. So paying top dollar for raw peptide ingredients is honestly a total waste of money unless you have advanced formulation. True efficacy relies entirely on specific chains, optimal concentrations, and specialized delivery systems engineered by chemists to bypass that exact biological limit. All right, let's pivot for a second and look at some of the unexpected market ripples this peptide boom is causing. Starting with a huge number, 2.5 million. That represents a staggering 300% surge in Amazon searches over the last year for one very specific category, and it's completely shifting the aesthetic landscape. Those 2.5 million searches, they're for hair growth supplements, and this is a direct consequence of the GLP-1 ripple effect. The widespread use of these weight loss drugs is birthing entirely new beauty categories just to combat side effects like hair loss, which is driving massive demand for collagen peptides and biotin. But here's the wild part highlighted in the report. Less than 5% of these hair supplements are actually tailored specifically for GLP-1 users. That is a huge, untapped market opportunity. We're also seeing some aggressive category expansion, what the industry likes to call the skinification of everything. Basically, face-grade peptide formulas are migrating down the entire human body. For instance, Pharmacy just dropped a lemon mint peptide lip smoothie for $22, bringing rapid skin clarification right to your lips. And moving further down, Australian brand EAOR introduced a firming butt essence for about $90 Australian, packing it with clinical peptides, collagen, and caffeine. So yeah, peptides are definitely not just for your face anymore. And all of this expansion is firmly rooted in hard financial reality. Just look at Kenvue's Q2 beauty sales growth of 5.1%. Peptides have evolved from simple marketing stories into actual balance sheet drivers. Mass market brands under the Kenvue umbrella, like Neutrogena and OGX, are using them as core growth engines right now. By bringing real peptide efficacy to everyday consumers, they're proving this trend has serious, permanent financial viability. However, as all the spending surges, we really have to acknowledge the 2 completely different regulatory realities we're dealing with. Topical safety versus injectable risks. On one hand, you have the safe zone of topicals, mild, localized efficacy, fully controlled under clear FDA cosmetics regulations. It's an ideal, safe entry point. On the other hand, you have the highly risky, unregulated gray market of injectables, operating with completely different and honestly dangerous parameters. The details of those risks are genuinely concerning. For example, on July 23rd and 24th of 2026, an FDA advisory vote moved to restrict BPC 157 strictly to controlled compounding pharmacies. Meanwhile, rampant gray market counterfeits are just flooding the system. We're talking about alarming lab tests revealing dangerous levels of arsenic and lead, well over safety limits, inside unverified injectable vials. The regulatory frameworks are scrambling right now just to catch up.
So, looking at the strategic outlook, one thing is crystal clear. The peptide boom is permanent. Consumers are carving out serious, non-negotiable budgets for these compounds. But with education and safety regulations lagging so far behind the aggressive spending, the next phase of market dominance won't just go to the loudest marketers. It is going to belong strictly to the brands that prioritize clinical transparency, verified safety, and truly advanced delivery systems.
So before you make your next investment, ask yourself, are you paying for proven scientific delivery or just buying into the peptide hype? That's all for this episode. Follow and comment Peptide to receive it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.